Hello, everyone, and welcome to 7EDU's Open Class. 7EDU's goal is to provide quality test prep to students and unlock their unique potentials. We are a team of experts with both strategies that have helped students not only in the Bay Area, but also around the world achieve perfect standardized test scores. Not only does 7EDU personalize your learning experience for each individual learner, but we also help develop academic confidence and success. In today's open class, our teacher will be Amy, who will be taking the lead in helping you master AP English while working through sample problems. Amy has teaching experience with various research institutions and has taught extensively on reading, writing, and essay sections on the SAT, as well as for general AP exams. Her students have improved their reading and writing scores by over 100 points, and with her tips and essay strategies, Amy will help you academically succeed. And this is just a short bio that we have here for Amy. You can go ahead and take a brief look. She studied law at Duke University, has a BA from UCLA, as well as a Master's of Humanities from the University of Chicago. So in our open class today, Amy will be working through sample problems from both AP English Literature and AP English Language. She will provide her personal tips and advice and help you identify the key differences between the two AP English exams. Shortly after, we will allow you, the viewers, to ask Amy some questions before we introduce the classes that Amy will be teaching for AP courses in March. If you stick to the end, we'll help you also schedule a free consultation about your academic plans and whatever study needs that you may have. I'm going to go ahead and pass on the PowerPoint on to Amy so she can go ahead and start her lesson for you guys. Amy, you can go ahead and share your screen.
I can't share it because you're still sharing it right now. Okay, there we go. Also, apologies. As you can tell, my dog is very excited because someone just got home. So give me 1 second. So hello, welcome to our open class. Let me just start presenting this right away. Okay, so first off, there are two tests we're going over today, the AP English Literature and the AP English Language tests. So first, what is the AP English Literature test? It's a test that focuses on the reader's ability to analyze and interpret works of literature. So mostly the test is there to gauge to see if a student is ready for introductory literary courses. So selected works can range from the 16th century to modern times. Most, if not all, are works of fiction. And it's really just testing if a student can close read a text to analyze the author's words for themes, diction, and overall argument. Okay, so here are the logistics. There's two sections. I think they also altered the test in 2019 to make the free response section a bit longer. So today we're going to be focusing on the multiple choice section of both, but if you have questions overall, then you can feel free to ask in the Q&A. Okay, so two sections is a 1 hour, 55 question multiple choice section. And the questions really are just testing to see reading comprehension, reading to see if you can understand the use of figurative language, sometimes just reading for thematic content, and a 2 hour, 3 question free response section. Okay, so the free response section consists of 3 essays. So of 2 of them, you get a pre-selected passage and you're asked to analyze that passage for theme, literary technique, or development. But for the last passage, the reader is able to select a work of their own choice. I think the qualifier is you need a work of similar literary merit of the works they select. So, don't choose something like Calvin and Hobbes or a comic. And then you're asked to analyze that focused on a theme. So the theme is pre-selected, but the work is not. You're allowed to choose whichever one the student wants to. Okay. So the first passage we're going to be going through is from The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. So this is, I believe, a 19th century American novel. So this is just an excerpt, and we're only going to need this excerpt for the following question. So when I read a passage, I don't linger line to line. for a fictional passage, I'm really just looking at the characters, the relationships between the characters. And when I reach the question, that will tell me what I need to focus on. But my first read through, I'm not going to waste time going over everything in excruciating detail. Okay, so let's look at this question. So in question 1, the phrase above the 40s in paragraph 1 most likely refers to, okay, so let's go back to the passage and see. So above the 40s occurs in line 3 when it says what? Though there is already talk of the erection and mobile metropolitan distances above the 40s of a new opera house. So already from the context, we know what is it about? It's about distance, it's about building real estate within this city. So which one can we eliminate then immediately? We can get rid of A, right? Because they're not talking about a musical era, they're talking about constructing a new opera house, right? About something within the distance. We can also get rid of the extravagant price of the lavish opera house because it's not about the price as well as the capacity. So really the only one that corresponds to where an opera house would be built within the context is C, the area of the city with street numbers higher than 40. And you notice that, similar to the SAT, for the multiple choice questions, a lot of the incorrect answers have keywords, but completely unrelated to the primary context of the passage. So all you needed to know for this, to answer this question, is to know that they're talking about constructing a building in a particular part of town. And with that, you can just get to C immediately. Okay. So this is a longer excerpt from the same novel. So we can briefly look over it. But mostly, in order to answer the following 2 questions is really just reading the context of the phrases they will tell you. So let's go. So the reference to new people whom New York was beginning to, oh, my camera's blocking that, was beginning to dread and yet be drawn to in paragraph 2 indicates that. So this is a question where the line reference itself contains a phrase that is going to tell you what the answer should be, okay? And that is this transitional phrase yet, okay? Because yet signifies what? That there's contrasting emotions, there's conflict in what the people, the established New Yorkers, think of these new people. So let's go look at which one of these answer choices even talks about a kind of conflict. So A, prominent established New Yorkers were enthralled with the new arrivals is incorrect because there's no conflict here, right? It's just simple exuberance, positive emotion. Okay, so let's go look at D. The established New Yorkers absolutely detested the relative newcomers to society. Also incorrect because that doesn't refer to, or what should I say? It doesn't account for the yet within the phrase itself. So now let's go look at B and C. Prominent New Yorkers successfully excluded any new people from established New York society. So if we look at those lines, okay, so conservatives cherished it for being smart and inconvenient and thus keeping out the new people whom New York was beginning to dread and yet be drawn to. If you look at the construction of these lines, it's not the New York who is keeping out the new people. It's whatever this it is that's keeping them out. So that's looking at the lines with the incorrect context. So the correct answer that accounts for the transitional phrase within the statement is B. Prominent New Yorkers both loathed and welcomed the inevitable change heralded by these social newcomers. So notice how we didn't have to read, the entire passage or even the majority of the paragraph to understand how to answer this question. And the reason is because the English literature passage tests a lot on close reading. It asks a lot of questions on specific words and details that if you're familiar with the SAT reading section, then it's similar to the vocabulary and context questions where you're trying to glean the definition of small details from the overarching context. Okay, so last one. So based on the context in paragraph 2, a program is most likely, so this is an interesting question. So let's go back to the paragraph. So the program is mentioned, let's see. where is it? Oh, here we go. So, I'm not even going to read the beginning because all I need is just the immediate context. So it's about how a brilliant audience had gathered to hear her, transported through the slippery, snowy streets in private broughams. So already, what do we know a brougham is related to? A type of transportation, right? Because these people are being transported in the brougham, in the spacious family landau, or in the humbler but more convenient brown coupe. Okay, so the or here, and with the depiction of humbler, says that this, whatever this thing is, doesn't seem like it's very humble. Okay, now I'm going to point you to a few other lines. Actually, no, I think we could answer it just based on this line itself. Let's go back to the question. Okay. So is it a fancy bicycle? No, because one, the time period doesn't allow for an early tram system. Because if we look at whatever things that are mentioned afterwards, it says what? It was one of the great livery stablemen's most last three intuitions. And I believe another part it mentions a coachman. So whatever it is, it's not cars. These people are still traveling through carriage, right? As it says here, as arriving in one's own carriage. So it's too early for it to be a tram system. It's also most likely not a fancy bicycle based on the reference to the livery and the stableman. And we also know it's most likely not a type of transportation for the lower class. Why? Because it's being contrasted to the humbler, but more convenient brown coupe, right? With the or here. So the private brougham appears to be a step up above this type of transportation, and it doesn't seem like it's being used for the lower class, okay? So the best answer for this would just be a type of horse-drawn vehicle. You go back to those lines. So that's A. Okay, so that's the multiple choice questions we're going over for the English literature section. Once again, you'll notice that a lot of them are asking, at least this selection is focused on details from the passage, and is mostly just reading for context in order to understand what these terms are. Or just what the argument of the, well, not really the argument, what the theme of the passage mostly is. Okay. So then let's move forward to the English language test. Okay, so the AP English language test is different in that it doesn't focus on close reading of literature. It focuses on really rhetorical analysis. So the writer's ability to determine or analyze whatever rhetorical devices an author uses in an argument. So it mainly asks students to be able to identify and utilize effective arguments, both in being able to parse that out from the text itself. So you have to be able to identify how an author argues their point and to utilize those same techniques in the free response section. Okay. So similar to the literature test, the test consists of two sections, an hour-long multiple choice section that has 23 to 25 questions focused on rhetorical analysis. So that's mostly, do you know how the author builds the argument? Would it reading comprehension? And 20 to 22 composition questions that ask the reader to edit the text being shown. And these are questions similar to, what evidence should an author add here to support his argument? But you notice how a lot of these questions are really structured around understanding how someone argues a text. And lastly, it's a 135-minute free response section that has 3 essays as well. So the free response essays, there are 3, and they're similar but different. So the first one is synthesis. So synthesis is when you, I don't want to use the word synthesize again. It's when you combine several texts to create an argument. So mainly it'll give you several texts and you're meant to get the main arguments from both and create an overarching argument of your own. The second one is analytical. You analyze a nonfiction passage for how it argues its point. And I think this part is very similar to the SAT essay portion, which also is mostly nonfiction passages that you analyze for rhetorical devices. And lastly, it's where the test taker will be asked to create an argument in response to a prompt. So this is just not only can you synthesize, can you analyze, but now can you use the tools to build an argument yourself? Okay, so today, once again, we're only focusing on the multiple choice section. So we have a passage here, I think, about women's suffrage, about allowing women the right to vote. I did not excerpt the entire passage, but as we will see, for most of the questions that I selected, which is 3 of them, you don't need access to the entire passage. All you need to know is what the author's primary argument is. And for that, you don't even really need the entire passage either. And to do some close reading of certain points. Okay, so this one. So which of the following best describes the writer's exigence in the passage? So exigence just means urgency, an urgent demand. Another way of rephrasing this question is which of the following best describes the writer's main purpose in the passage? So this is just asking you for the passage's main argument. So there are a few parts in the passage that we can look. We can look at the last sentence of the first paragraph, the first sentence of the first paragraph, look at topic sentences of the following body paragraphs, and then for the conclusion, look at the last sentence. So I'm going to point you to a few sentences. So the first one is in lines 48. It is a practical political means, only means we, so the author speaking for someone's behalf here, and you'll notice it's on behalf of women, consider open to voteless persons to bring about a political situation which can only be solved by giving women the vote. So what is this about? It's about a group of people attempting to bring forward a situation that can only be solved through the quote unquote practical means if they had access to what they're asking for in the first place. So now let's go look at the last sentence of the passage. So they would have to choose. So this is talking about a hypothetical situation where men are not allowed the right to suffrage. They would have to choose. They would have to make a choice of 2 evils. They would either have to submit indefinitely to an unjust state of affairs, or they would have to rise up and adopt some of the antiquated means by which men in the past got their grievances remedied. And this is just talking about revolt, rebellion, right? I don't know why they copied that twice. Okay, so which of the following best describes the writer's exigence in the passage? Well, clearly she's talking about granting a group the right to suffrage, right? But that's not the only thing. Part of her argument is that in accessing and demanding this right, the same group of people, i.e. women, need to access means that are less political because they don't have accessibility to the only political means of creating change, which is voting, okay? So let's go look at the answers that are clearly incorrect. So E is clearly incorrect, right? Because nothing in this passage is about the high tax rate. A is also incorrect because it's not about getting everyone to vote. It's not about a lack of interest. And then you can also get rid of D because notice we are not contrasting American and British people in this passage. We're talking about one group of people who do not have the traditional means to get the right to suffrage, who have to look at more quote unquote antiquated means, okay? And then you can also get rid of B, the growing trend of using violence to address women's employment concerns, because the topic here is suffrage, it's not about employment. So C is the best answer, even though it's the most general. It's about the limited resources available to women for changing existing power structures. Because if we look at both of the sentences I read aloud, look at the word only here. And here is talking about choosing between 2 evils, right? So in either situations, it's about a group of people who have very limited means to effect the change that they want. And in the passage as a whole, it's about women wanting the right to vote. Okay. Next one. So in the third paragraph, the writer criticizes the logic of those who dismiss the methods of British feminists as irrational, line 42, on the grounds that they have, this is mainly what I would say, a reading comprehension question. So let's move back to line 42. Okay. So I'm going to start at line 39. It is very irrational, you say, even if these women had sufficient intelligence to understand what they were doing and really did want the vote, they have adopted very irrational means for getting the vote. So this is giving you the line reference for the context of their rationality. Now to understand what the author says in response to this, because let's go back to the question again. Okay, because it's asking how the writer criticizes the logic, right? So in the line reference, it does not contain the writer's criticism. It contains those who dismiss the methods of British feminists, right? That's what it contains. So we have to read further on in the paragraph to know how the writer actually criticizes this. So right after this is where the author responds. Now, if you say that, who is the you? The people who dismiss that, right? It shows you do not understand the meaning of our revolution at all. I want to show you that when damage is done to property, it is not done in order to convert people to women's suffrage at all. And then it is a practical political means. Okay. So how would I summarize this argument? Well, it says that you do not understand the meaning of the revolution. And it says that when damage is done, is not done in order to convert people. So basically, she's saying that these people do not understand the end goal of why women are protesting this way, right? They're not rebelling, and their act of rebellion isn't to convert people. It's that they have no other choice other than to use these means to get the right to vote. Okay, so let's go back to this one. Which one can we get rid of? Well, D, ignored a key distinction between American feminists and British feminists. You note that in the author's response, she never mentions American feminists, right? Assume that feminists do not understand the normal political process. While those lines do refer to the political process, her argument is not that these people have assumed that feminists don't understand the political process. She's saying that it's the only means, right? So this isn't about a lack of understanding, it's about a lack of choice. Okay, so we get rid of E. Okay, so C, overlook accounts that present a less provocative view of feminist activism in Britain. And those lines I read aloud to you, it never mentioned anything of the sort. So get rid of C. And then B is also just a patently incorrect answer. Failed to verify the identities of those responsible for acts of vandalism. Because this is not what she said in her response. Her response is mainly you misconstrued the feminist reasons for employing the strategies they have chosen to employ. So once again, let's go back to those lines. It says, I want to show you that when damage is done to property, so the vandalism, it is not done in order to, right? So what is the reason for the property damage? It's not in order to convert people to supporting the cause. It's really because they have no other choice, because they don't have the political means. Okay, so then let's move forward to the last question, which is 7. So in the context of the passage, all the following phrases refer to the same idea except. So this is an interesting question. It seems almost like a reverse analogy question where you're saying, okay, so all these things are similar except for one. And the key to answering this question is really understanding, what the area of commonality is between certain phrases, and also understanding what the author's primary argument is. So for one thing, the author is contrasting the what shall we say, the antiquated means, right? Or the more violent means that the British feminists have resorted to. And she's contrasting them to what? The political means, which is where you appeal to the government and try to enact change that way. And her argument is that women, the feminists, have used the more violent means because they have no access to the political means. So if you notice, A and B are actually, I don't think A is in the excerpt I gave you, but revolutionary methods, militant methods, what are these referring to? Well, clearly they're referring to the more extreme measures that the women's suffrage movement is using. So these two are similar, okay? The only means we consider open to voteless persons, well, this is clearly also referring to what? The people who are lobbying for women's suffrage, because once again, what? They don't have the right to vote, so they don't have access to the common means. So let's go look at E, some of the antiquated means by which men in the past got their grievances remedied. If we go look at the last sentence, what is she contrasting? They would have to rise up and adopt some of the antiquated means, or they would have to submit indefinitely to an unjust state of affairs, right? And what is she saying these men, the hypothetical men in this situation, cannot do? Was she saying they could not vote the legislature out? So within context, you should know antiquated means here is also talking about rebellion, revolt. So basically the same as the revolutionary methods, militant methods, etc. So the correct answer here is D, the proper and constitutional and practical way of getting their grievance removed. So let's go look at line 55 to 57, just to check, okay? Suppose the men of Hartford had a grievance and they laid that grievance before their legislature, etc., etc. What would be the proper and the constitutional and the practical way of getting their grievance removed? And then she says, is general election, right? But here it's talking about what? It's not talking about the militant means. It's not talking about revolts. This is called you basically going with what the system says, right? Because the system says you go and you vote, right? You elect a new person who's going to address your grievance. But since these people do not have the right to vote, they basically have no access to the constitutional and the practical way of getting their grievance removed. So the correct answer would therefore be D. Okay. So really, what is the difference between the two tests? You notice that the two tests do test on similar skill sets. It's really just reading analysis and comprehension on the free response section. It's a lot of being able to build an argument, but the English literature test is more based on literary analysis. So you'll get questions that ask you to analyze the author's use of figurative language. You'll get questions that ask you about a theme. It's really focused on really just exegesis of text, usually fictional text. Whereas the English language test is based on rhetorical analysis. What we mean by that is just argument analysis. I think most of the passages on the language test are nonfiction. It's really being able to understand how an author argues a point, right? What are the structures they use? What are the tools they use? What are the devices / techniques they use? You need to be able to identify that in the passage along with the author's main argument. And the free response also reflects this because it's all about, can you synthesize an argument? Can you analyze an argument? And lastly, can you create an argument? So I think that will be all for the essay, for the sample question analysis portion. And we're going to open it up to Q&A right now.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. So yeah, we're going to open this up to the attendees. We do have some questions that people sent through us for WeChat, so we'll maybe pick one to maybe three of them. And then if you guys have any questions, the audience, please add it to the Q&A box or the chat box, and then Amy will also help to answer it. So one of them asked, when picking between the two AP English exams, how should I pick?
That's a very good question. I honestly think you're better off maybe talking to a counselor if you're asking for reasons of, college admissions. I would pick according to what AP courses are offered by your school, because I know not all schools offer AP language and AP literature as classes, and also just what other one are you more interested in studying and taking the test for? The skill set for both are the same. So there is difference, but I don't think there's that much difference. So really, if you have the time, just take both. It's probably not the answer you want, but I think that really just depends on what you hope to study in college. Okay.
And then I believe there's also one in the Q&A box from Rebecca. She asked, this year the multiple choice is being remodeled. Could you talk a little bit more about that? What kind of changes are they making?
So I actually haven't heard that much changes to the multiple choice section. I think they're making a few refinements for the language part. I have heard, so from what I've gleaned, they really just made the free response section longer. So it seems as if they're not focusing on multiple choice as much. You'll notice that it's only 1/3 of the test, really time-wise and content-wise. They're really focusing more on the free response / writing portion, because I think for both tests, they were elongated. Multiple choice, I think they added perhaps a few more question types, but the strategies are all the same. It's just, the same animal, different stripes.
Thank you. Hope that answers your question, Rebecca. And then going back to one of the other questions we picked from WeChat. Um, for both the English AP exams, I think they're asking about strategies. Would you be using the same ones, or are there different strategies that you should be applying for either or?
You know, I think for the multiple choice section, I think there's a lot of overlap because being able to close read a piece of literature is very similar to being able to analyze an argument, right? Only we don't call them arguments in literature, we call them themes. The only difference is that I think the AP English Literature section has more questions that have to do with inference or implied meaning, because unlike nonfiction passages, the lit passages won't state directly what the theme is. So if there's any difference, it's that lit will ask you to read for some more applied meaning. But if you notice, even based on, when we did the multiple choice questions, you can notice that there's some similarity in the strategies. Is really just being able to read for context. And since this is a multiple choice test, is really being able to use process of elimination intelligently and liberally.
Thank you. I think we'll stick probably with those two WeChat questions for the time being. We're going to go ahead and move on towards showing the AP courses and SAT courses that Amy will be teaching. So you're free to leave, Amy. We'll go ahead and show the courses that she will be teaching for this March. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Okay. Well, Rebecca had another question, and I think it's equally divided because we focus both on the free response and the multiple choice. Right, because you need to do well on both in order to do well on the test.
Oh yeah, and then let me clarify the question that our audience had. She was wondering what we concentrate on, whether it's the reading part or the reading, and Amy just answered that it depends, right? Is that what you?
But we focus on both because you need to do well on both.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So
yeah, so that will end our live Q&A portion with Amy, and then we'll go ahead and show the courses that she'll be teaching this March. Thank you, Amy. Let me go and share my screen. Yes, so in March, we will be having AP courses available, and specifically for Amy, she'll be our leading teacher for our AP English courses. So that includes AP English Literature and the AP English Language that she just gave you a sample on. So let's go ahead and take a look at AP English really quick. Yes, so both of the classes that Amy will be teaching are specialized courses, and they're taught either in smaller group classes. So your student will receive the maximum and focused attention from Amy herself. And both of these classes are structured in that they have strategy development and real practice tests that Amy will go through with each student. And then this is the schedule that we have for the upcoming course that Amy is teaching. So it's March 27th to May 1st, and it's every Friday from 5:30 to 7:30. And in total, your child will be preparing with 12 hours of study material. And that's the same for both AP English Literature as well as the AP English Language. And then, of course, Amy is also teaching one of our SAT courses that we have this Sunday, actually. And this will be the one that's upcoming Sunday, February 23rd, this Sunday. Students enrolled will receive 18 lecture hours from our teachers, along with 12 hours of class practice time with an on-site teacher assistant. So this is the schedule roughly. This SAT course provides a near real practice test taken at the beginning of the course to target strengths and weak points for improvement in the early stage, and another at the end of the course that includes an improvement evaluation and 2 hours of review. So again, here's like a rough breakdown. It's going to be every Sunday, and it's starting this week. And our instructors are June, Dr. Yan, and Amy. And I believe we have a Q&A. Let me check this question real quick. Alrighty, yeah, I'll go ahead and go back to the slide real quick. Yes, so Amy will be teaching both the AP and the SAT courses that I just showed to you. So if you are unsure about what preparation you need for your child, we can always help you. If you scan the WeChat QR code or call the number on the screen, we can help you book an appointment so we can help you consult about what is best for your child or what support your student will need. And if you need to explore more information, like I said, scan the QR code or call the phone number on the screen. And that concludes our open class, and we thank you all for supporting and watching us today. We'll go ahead and leave the screen on for you guys for roughly 5 to 10 minutes. And then, yeah, thank you.